There is so much more to life than what we see. What if we were capable of feeling it? This is the Inner Guide Podcast, a journey back to you. Welcome to the Inner Guide Podcast. My name is Isabel Churchill, and I'm your guide for this journey back to you. This week we talk about something that I've been experiencing in the past month, and I've noticed that a lot of people are experiencing the same thing, which could be called a spiritual initiation or just an initiation or simply, in the real world, a friggin' hard time. A lot of us are going through a really, really hard time. And a lot of us experiencing emotions that have been running through cycles in our life. And it's just been such a challenge because when those feelings or emotions rise again, we always have this disappointing feeling that, oh no, I have to work on this again. So the initiation to me is really a moment where it's life-changing. It's a moment where, yes, we're going through a super hard time, but we finally break that cycle. We finally move forward. We finally step above this obstacle. The initiation I got for me really happened truly this week. It was challenging because I was going through an experience that I haven't experienced in years, and that experience was the sense of emptiness or loneliness inside of me. And it's hard to share that with you because there's some part of me that don't want anyone to judge my family, to judge my friends, to judge my spouse. Because when we say I feel lonely, I feel empty, we would have the tendency to say, well, it's because the people around you don't make you feel like you are surrounded or supported. And that is actually not the case at all. I have the most supportive husband. I have the most supportive family. I have very supportive friends. So it's that sense of emptiness that was inside of me had absolutely nothing to do with how my environment was. It was just something that was so deep that I just can't explain. And just the example I always give to people of how I feel is as a child for years, and I'm saying years, like for the longest time, I remember crying myself to bed and not crying loud because I was probably in my 10-year-old, 9, 10. So it wasn't like when I was a baby and crying. Of course, my mom would have been there. It was more I was crying and hiding it from people around me. And I was crying because I just felt like I was not in the right place. I felt like I was not part of this planet. And it sounds weird to say, but my feeling was really about God taking me back home. I wanted God to take me back. I wanted God to take me back and away from this planet. And that happened I remember for probably months and maybe years that I just kept on asking to take me back. And it was so hard, and it happened a few times in my life when I was a teenager. I remember every time I had some really big challenges on the earth, I would be asking for help, but that way, like, just take me back. I can't do this. I can't human anymore. And for the longest time, that sense disappeared. I didn't have that experience anymore. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you today is because I'm feeling that a lot of us are going through that type of initiation where some really deep down feelings are currently rising. And it's probably connected to all the planets in retrograde. I know Mercury retrograde has a tendency to bring back past stuff for us to heal. So it's a great opportunity to work with those energies today. And I felt like my experience, even though I feel so alone in that experience, I am sure that there's somebody out there listening to me and are like, oh my goodness, that's exactly what I'm going through. So I'm hoping that what I'm sharing will speak to one of you and maybe inspire you to move forward. So like I said, this emotion came back in the past week. My husband has been away in Guam, and it's been hard because Guam has 14 hours difference, so it's a little bit hard to connect, and he got sick while he was there. So there was a lot of situation where it was difficult and challenging to communicate. And I remember telling him on one morning that I was feeling alone, and he said, well, I'll be there in a few days. And I knew that was meant to make me feel better and and I knew that me saying that probably made him feel like he was responsible for me feeling alone. But it wasn't that. It was just so deep inside of me. I just couldn't explain it. And once I hung up the phone with him, I kind of sat down with the emotion, and I really invite you to do that. Whenever there's something really hard, just try to sit with it. And I'm lucky that I have my friend Lou who can walk me through those phases. I know I can always go to her, and she can hold space for me to be able to experience those. And she can also call me up when I'm not allowing the space to experience these things. So I sat down and really experienced emotion. I took a moment to really sense what was going on. And that's when I realized that the emotion I was experiencing was actually connected to the emotion that I had as a child. And then I started realizing that I have had that emotion quite a few times in my life. It has been around more than once. And it's weird. It's such a weird and profound feeling. It's like so far deep inside of me. So I allow that feeling to be there, and I close my eyes, and the thing is that all week I felt constantly being pulled. And by that I mean the energy was so hard for me to ground myself. It was so challenging to a point that when I was driving, I would have to talk myself through driving. Okay, focus in front. Keep your mind on the road. Keep on looking forward. And just staying connected with the present moment was so hard. So when I experienced that feeling that morning, hung up with my husband and just decided to sit and experience it. So I sat down and I felt that pull again. And I felt like it was time to let go and just allow whatever was meant to happen. And as soon as I closed my eyes and allowed that pull, it kind of pulled up all those deep, deep, deep emotion of emptiness. It was really scary because when you experience a feeling that is so deep and so profound, it made me almost sick to my stomach, to a point that I felt like I was going to faint. I was going to faint, and it got so hot, and I just felt so uncomfortable. And when I felt that uncomfortable, my mind was like, okay, there's something wrong. I gotta come back. So I came back, and I I realized at that point that I didn't like what was happening at all. So I chatted with my friend Lou, and Lou was like, I don't think you're done. I think you need to go back. And I was like, oh, I think you're right. And that's why it's good to have a coach or somebody that can help us through that process, because sometimes it's so scary to do it alone that we need that little push, that little motivation, that insight. And thank goodness she's she's a very intuitive person, so she was able to call me out right away on that emotion. So I was like, okay, I'll go back in. So I went back in, and again, I got really hot, really uncomfortable. And part of me was like, just breathe through it. Allow yourself to breathe, to give it space. So I gave it space, and the more I was giving it space, the less I was feeling uncomfortable. And all of a sudden, I just saw this beautiful experience. And it was interesting because I was sitting outside on my patio, and I could sense that there was a bird that was perched right behind my head. And it's almost like I became invisible. Like the emptiness was so deep inside that I became the emptiness. And to a point that nature, I was non-existent. And the nature around me just kept not seeing me. That's how it felt. Because at one point I opened my eyes and I had that chipmunk like not a foot away from me. Didn't even realize that I was there doing his thing. And as soon as I moved, it freaked him out. But yet I had been there all along. So all that to say that it was really fascinating to see how when I allow the feeling of emptiness, I become one with what is around me. And it sounds cliche, but it's really what I truly experience. I experience that no matter how empty I am, yet I'm always connected. And this is the initiation that I had to experience. Your initiation will be different. It will be a different experience. It will be a different feeling, something different. But all that to say that when you face your fear, you realize that there's nothing to fear in the end. You realize that there's absolutely nothing to fear and everything is okay. So my biggest fear was to be empty, was to not exist, or being invisible. I always felt like I was invisible to some people sometimes. I still feel to this day that I am invisible to a lot of people. Many people that are really close to me don't really know me. They don't know a lot of who I am. And I feel like I've allowed that because I'm always interested in others and I don't share a lot about myself. I'm a very private person, and you couldn't tell because of the podcast, but I am a very private person and I like my privacy, and I don't let a lot of people in, just I guess because with time I've learned that humans are not really interested in other people. They're interested in themselves. And I've learned, first, I'm a psychotherapist by trade, so I've learned to listen. That's what I'm trained to do. And also, I've learned to be different in the sense that I've always been interested in what others people do, who they are, how they think, how they feel. It's always been something that fascinates me. So when you create that space for the other person to share, there's often this, there's no time for the opposite, for me to share about myself. So all that to say that I often felt like I didn't matter, in the sense of it doesn't matter who I am, what I do, where I come from. What matters is the present moment and how we share together. But I felt invisible, and I often told my spouse that sometimes in my friendship, I felt like it was a one-way, where the person would ask me how I am, and then they would just go on about their life without thinking of asking me about my life. And that's okay, and I've tolerated that, and I feel like I have changed my friendship a lot so that it's no longer like that. But that's just explained that sense of emptiness and not mattering, and just that sense of being invisible to the world. And I feel like I've healed that aspect in the past week, because once I've done that, I I just realized that there was nothing to fear. I realized that it's impossible for me to be empty. It's impossible for me to be invisible. And because I'm always connected, I'm always connected to myself. I always have myself. And I've experienced the worst of the worst in the emotion. So now I can understand and appreciate how it is and how the worst can be. And the worst is not that bad. I survived to tell the tale. But it has led me to believe that anyone can do it. Once you face your biggest fear, once you face that deep emotion that you're terrified of something happening, you're no longer afraid of it because you faced it. You have emerged from whatever was the worst part of your life. And that's the initiation. And initiation is like a cleanse. It's something that comes and cleanses you of fear, of patterns, of emotions that are no longer relevant to you. You change your belief system, you change your person, you change your point of view to a point where it allows you to become somebody who is more evolved, somebody who has progress in life. So a lot of you are probably experiencing that initiation right now. Some it will be in the form of mental illness, physical illness. Others will be in the form of huge major change in your life, maybe divorce, maybe being laid off from work. It could show up in different ways, but just know that it's showing up to help you move to the next phase. And it can be scary as hell. It's still the right path. Like when you do something and you're terrified, it doesn't have to paralyze you. It can actually push you. It can actually feed your motivation and your forward movement, especially when you see it as something that will allow you to grow and to evolve. For me, I was so uncomfortable with the emotion of loneliness that it was easy to avoid. It's always easy to avoid the emotions that we don't want. So we avoid them. Well, for me, I avoid them through food, eating. I avoid them by watching TV, which I rarely ever do. And I know when I watch like 2 hours of TV every day for a week, there's something I'm avoiding. It's just completely clear to me. So the initiation is really a time of challenge. It's a time of, are we going to be able to face it or not? And the initiation will last until you truly face it. And that could be years. That could be a long time for some people. It could be a long time of being initiated. And when I say that, I'm thinking of all the opportunities I've had in my life to face that feeling. I remember when I was violated by my first boyfriend, that was an opportunity to face the loneliness. I felt so alone in that experience, but yet again, I avoided the experience. I avoided the emotions. And then I moved on to college, and I had different experience in college and opportunities to face that void, to face that emptiness, and I didn't. And it's almost like there's so many things that could have gone wrong, or that I could tell you that went wrong in my life, but yet looking at it from the perspective of today, I can tell you everything happened for a reason. You know, I went through some pretty shitty experience and we all have, that have scarred me for a long time in my life and have ruined my relationships with love relationships for sure. And I know that for the longest time, it was really hard for me to get close to a person. I would have no problem having a distant relationship, But when it became to get really close and open to the person, it's almost when that void inside of me appeared. It's hard to explain, and I'm not sure why it shows up like that. But I've had so many opportunities of facing that void, and yet I would avoid it. I would avoid the void and move on to the next thing. And, you know, when I think back of my first marriage, I had so many opportunities to face that void. Although I did face my trauma of the violation I had, and I healed from that, which is the beauty of it. But as soon as I healed from that, there was a separation and divorce. And at that time when I separated, I could have sat down and just faced that emptiness, faced that loneliness. And yet I did not. I made the choice of being alone. And making the choice of being alone is not facing loneliness. It's not facing the emptiness. It's more the stubbornness, I would say. Like you're actually choosing because you don't want to be imposed. So it's not the same, and I didn't take the opportunity back then to really sit and experience that. On the other hand, I went and distracted myself externally. I met Austin, my husband, at that time, about 2 weeks about separation. I met Austin, and it's been quite a good distraction. He's actually my soulmate. I truly believe that. But I did not take the opportunity to heal the void that was inside of me until this week. And it's just been so good. I've healed that. My husband came home 2 days after I healed, and it's just been different. It's like now I'm not afraid of being alone. I'm not afraid of the emptiness inside of me. And I still feel it in the sense that when I sense that sense of emptiness, for me it's a sign of just sitting with it. It's no longer uncomfortable. It's part of me. It's part of who I am. And it's okay to feel that. It's almost like when somebody really close to you pass away, there's different phases of grieving. There's one that you're in denial, and then you move into acceptance. And moving into acceptance doesn't change the fact that the person is no longer there. It's okay, and we accept it. And we're still sad once in a while, but we're okay about it. And it's the same thing about this emotion. It's like, it's present, but I'm okay with it. And I don't really feel loneliness. I just have sometimes that void, and when it's there, I face it, I sit with it, and then I feel like, oh, it's just there as a compass to direct me to center myself. So it's almost like a call home. It calls me home when I have that feeling. And it's definitely not the same as it was. So I truly invite you to explore what is the initiation you're going through. What is the emotion you've been avoiding for so long and that you're not facing? And try to really face it and allow yourself to be uncomfortable. Give yourself permission to not be okay. Give yourself permission to not know what happens next. And just face the music, face that aspect of you, that emotion that you've been experiencing for a long time, and stop trying to push it away. Stop trying to be distracted from it, because it's only showing up for you to pay attention to it, not to push it away. And that's such an important lesson to me, is that when that experience comes, instead of trying to distract me, trust me, I tried to distract myself so much. I started painting, I went to the gym, I went for a walk, I ate a lot of food, I made food, I watched TV, played games on my phone. I tried everything to make that feeling go away, and it wouldn't. until I realized it won't go away because it wants to be heard, it wants to be explored, it wants to be connected. So just take that time, identify that emotion, and maybe you don't have a word for it. Maybe you just have the sense, and that's okay, because I didn't have a complete word for it. I just felt that discomfort. I just felt like that uneasiness inside of me. But as soon as I sat, I started being shown different moments in my life when I was feeling so empty, so alone and disconnected from everything. And you'll probably experience the same thing. You'll probably have those memories that come back. And maybe while I'm talking, they're coming back, they're showing up. I'm giving you that space for you to really explore that. I'm giving you the opportunity to end or finish your initiation. Once you're past that initiation, things just are completely different. Things are just more smooth, peaceful, allows you to really see the world differently. And I am so grateful for that experience. I'm so grateful of how it happened. I don't wish it happened before. I don't wish it happened later. I'm just grateful it happened. And that's the beauty of the experience, and to be in the present moment. So thank you for listening, and I hope this helps you move forward. It was a great week for me, and I hope it will be for you also, to be able to face the truth, allow yourself to rise just like the phoenix, move forward, face the fear, and just don't let any aspect of your ego stop you from moving forward, stop you from facing the truth. It's been great chatting with you. I will reconnect next week. Until then, I wish you an amazing time. Take care.